Well, the thesis statement of this channel is beating absolutely every game in existence. I'll never actually accomplish it. Most of these games aren't bad, some might even be considered great, but I have some personal connection that makes me never want to play them again. So let's drink some haterade and talk about the top 10 games you will never see on Backlog Buster. Number 10. Out of This World / Another World is a critically acclaimed piece of garbage. Seriously, I just don't get it. I genuinely do not understand how this game is universally loved by reviewers. This game epitomizes every single thing I hate about certain games. I absolutely cannot stand this style of running and jumping. It's horrendous to play and incredibly inaccurate. And then it's filled to the absolute brim with gotcha deaths. On the very first screen, no less. And you know what the worst bit about it is? I traded in Final Fantasy II on the Super Nintendo for this piece of garbage. Number 9. I have played and beaten Darkest Dungeon, but I only did so under the most dire of circumstances. During the dark years of 2020 in lockdown, I played Darkest Dungeon in its entirety, including all of the DLC. But the only reason I did that was that I needed something to play while I grinded Final Fantasy V for an All Berserkers challenge. Coming soon. At first glance, Darkest Dungeon does have the makings of greatness, a fantastic art style and amazing sound design. Which is all well and good if you were making a TV show or movie, but we only talk about video games around these parts. Darkest Dungeon's core gameplay is simplistic, which isn't actually a negative at all. The problem is that the game is just a massive grind fest. All you do in this game is grind. Grind up your characters so you can challenge harder and harder dungeons to eventually tackle the Darkest Dungeon. Oops, one of them got comboed into a death blow and you had no recourse. Now your team of 4 that you've been preparing needs a new member. So you grind up a new team, but now that team is a solid team, and you're still down a man for your original team. So you grind up a new team. The worst thing a game can be is boring and a waste of your time. Darkest Dungeon crosses the line from being simply a little grindy to just straight up wasting hours and hours of your life to random chance. Random chance that the developers don't even know how to calculate properly. Listen, Red Hook is based in Vancouver, and I'm around the same area, so I know how the school system works here. And in school, I learned that 100% of something means all of it. Somebody at Red Hook missed the memo. This trinket blocks 100% of stress damage versus a certain attack, so why did I take 8? Those Vancouver boys proving once again that they can't do math. Number 8. I've tried to get through Legend of Dragoon many times in my life. I rented it near release, and I've made attempts to get through it every few years since. This is exactly like my story with Chrono Cross, but the difference is, I actually was able to push through and beat Chrono Cross. Legend of Dragoon's setting and story seemed really interesting, and I was personally invested in the plot and characters. My first attempt through, I got to about halfway through Disc 2, but every subsequent attempt, I barely made it out of the Limestone Cave. I just can't get over one simple fact of the game, and that's the addition system. I think the core concept of timed hits is great in most games that have them. It gives you a little extra engagement in a genre that's pretty well known for being, well, unengaging and fairly slow-paced. It's usually just a quick button press for some bonus damage or defense, like in Super Mario RPG. The problem with the additions in Legend of Dragoon is that you have to engage with them, otherwise your damage is complete garbage. You have to sit there and do a chain of QuickTime events to actually do reasonable damage. This isn't some uncommon thing either, it's for every single basic attack. JRPGs are a slow genre, and slowing down combat even further with the addition of the addition system just slows it down to a pace that I personally cannot tolerate. Legend of Dragoon could have the greatest story and gameplay known to mankind, but I'll never know, because I just can't get over the addition system. It's a complete deal breaker. And before you type up a storm in the comments, I know there's the ultimate War God accessory which makes your additions complete perfectly automatically. The last time I attempted Legend of Dragoon, I was going to concede to purchasing 3 of them so I could actually just push through and finish the darn thing. But they are so insanely expensive that it was unfeasible to get without cheating in cash via GameShark or grinding for literal days on end. Unfortunately, that just means that Legend of Dragoon is a game I'll never, ever get around to. Number 7. Xenogears has the honor of a game that, despite me giving it the old college try, was so boring that I simply couldn't stay awake playing it. The combat system is totally fine. I actually kind of like a bunch of the mechanics that it has. Except for the fact that you can't heal in your mechs until after you beat a certain boss who can just kill you if you get bad luck. Great design decision, by the way. No, it's none of that. What kills Xenogears for me is that it has so much dialogue that it actually gives you intermissions to save in between them. I swear, there was like a straight hour of dialogue only for me to move 2 rooms to a save point, at which point the dialogue continued. It's not like they were saying anything profound either. It was all monotonous drivel. This also isn't that deep into the game either. I think I capped out at like 6 hours. It reached a point where I asked myself, do I want to play a video game or read a book? Since Xenogears has made me fall asleep in my chair multiple times, I think I'd rather just sit idly in my chair and never ever get to Disc 2 instead. Number 6. At its core, Alundra is basically a Link to the Past, or probably more accurately Link's Awakening. Fitting that both games start with shipwrecks in that regard. Alundra is a dreamwalker with the ability to enter people's dreams. Turns out this is super important to helping free the townspeople of Anoa from the dark god Melzus. The story is actually really interesting, engaging, and surprisingly super dark. Alundra also has beautiful art and sound design too. Combat is a little bit on the monotonous side, which is entirely Working Design's fault because they doubled the health of every enemy in the game. You're probably thinking, wow, that sounds awful, why would they ruin Alundra like that? The doubling of enemy health is barely an issue. It pales in comparison to the worst offense Alundra commits, and that's that the puzzles require insane precision on your part. That's right, the puzzles themselves aren't difficult to figure out what to do, or what the solution requires. They're usually fairly simple, with a couple of exceptions, of course. The problem is that most of these puzzle solutions are so ridiculously precise that it may legitimately take you upwards of 40 attempts to get it right, and that's not an exaggeration. Try, fail, and be forced to leave the room, come back, and try again. If I tried to play Alundra now instead of my early 20s, I would have packed it in long before getting even remotely close to the end. Number 5. Donkey Kong 64. A Christmas gift for young Wesley back in 1999. I spent the final days before the world ended during the dreaded Y2K playing this. As far as I know, Donkey Kong 64 still has the record for most collectibles in a video game. You know what's not fun? Collectibles for the sake of collecting. Especially when your collectibles are not optional at all, but completely and 100% mandatory for game completion. Probably should have mentioned that right at the start there, Rareware. This blanket, no thanks, is going to apply to every single collectathon. At least the ones by Rare, including Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie and Jet Force Gemini. It's also why modern attempts at the genre like Yooka-Laylee have flopped. The genre's just not that fun, and honestly, it's never been that fun. Even past Wes in 1999 realized this. It's way more intuitive, fun, and enjoyable to have several clear-cut goals in a level. Like in the absolute summertime slammer Mario Sunshine. Running around a big level directionless, collecting things for the sake of collecting them, sucks. Especially when you miss one banana, and you have to swap characters and then go all the way back to get it. The collectathon genre has died, and honestly, it should absolutely stay that way. Enjoy these games in your memories, friends, and leave the collectathons there. Number 4. I've played the PS1 Clock Tower and it was fine. I would consider it barely a horror game and more of a goofy and honestly pretty annoying point-and-click adventure. At least it was playable. Then in saunters Clock Tower 2, The Struggle Within, which is actually the 3rd game in the series. The Struggle Within is absolutely correct because I struggled to continue playing. I have played a lot of unintuitive games, and this is a game I spent 2 hours on and couldn't figure out how to make any progress through the first level. This is easily one of the most unintuitive games I've ever played. I think honestly, it really just comes down to the fact that I'm not really interested in specifically Asian horror as a subgenre, and my genuine disdain for the completely unhinged puzzle solutions in most point-and-click adventure games. There are a few exceptions to this, of course, and a couple of games on my bucket list to get through. After those big titles, I think I can just safely stay away from most Asian horror games and point-and-clicks in general. They really are two bad tastes that taste even worse together. Number 3. In my youth, I loved the Zelda franchise. In fact, every single Christmas break from school, I would make an effort to play through at least one Zelda game. It was a great little tradition. That all changed with the release of Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. I played it at launch. I sat there waggling my Wii controllers. I sat there reading every single box of dialogue, once from whoever was saying it, then having it annoyingly repeated to me by Fee, as if I was a child. I sat through getting explained how dowsing worked for the 800th time. I played through the exact same areas multiple times, and don't even get me started on the Silent Realms. But I soldiered on. right up until I went back to the volcano for the third time. All my gear was stripped from me, and it suddenly turned into a stealth game.
We're leaving.
I took it out of my console and never played it again. This is the game that completely killed my interest in the Zelda series. That's why when they announced Skyward Sword HD, I legitimately laughed. I sat there wondering if people just forgot that the entire game sucked on a fundamental level. Oh, the problem was the waggling controllers, you guys. No. The waggling controllers and constant controller desync was just the lowest hanging fruit to complain about. The entirety of Skyward Sword was repetitive, boring, and monotonous tasks. As if it wasn't clear, I shan't be playing Skyward Sword ever again. But this is also a kind of blanket no Nintendo statement as well. The unfortunate reality is that Nintendo is very protective of their IP and often have very anti-video creator man practices. I work hard to make my videos, and the idea of Nintendo claiming or striking them down just does not sit well with me. You probably won't see a lot of Nintendo games in the future, and you definitely won't catch me playing Skyward Sword. Number 2. I'm really over Hideo Kojima and his ruse cruises. I put up with his nonsensical dialogue and grade school level philosophy takes throughout the entirety of the Metal Gear series, but Death Stranding really took the cake. The dialogue was just some of the most insane, nonsensical drivel I've ever heard said, and I could honestly forgive it if the game was at least halfway fun or decent, or if the dialogue was funny enough to laugh at. I've just had enough with Kojima's nonsense at this point in my life. I have nostalgia for the game, so you may eventually see some Metal Gear coverage on this channel, but I have absolutely no interest in anything Kojima's making post Metal Gear Solid 5. From a purely gameplay standpoint, Metal Gear Solid 4 and 5 are actually really, really good. They're just bogged down by some of the worst stories imaginable. The best Metal Gear games had a co-writer, so I can only assume that man was doing God's work in restraining Kojima's unbridled stupidity. A shame because writing is a complete squandering of his talents. Number 1. This one may be a bit of a surprise, but it just comes down to one simple factor. I've played the Monster Hunter series to death, bro. I have thousands of hours across the original game, Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, Monster Hunter Tri, and 3 Ultimate. I even imported Portable 3rd HD on PS3, and learned basic Japanese just to navigate the menus. It was my game. For a long time I was happy to play every Monster Hunter as it came out, but that eventually slowed down to every other Monster Hunter. Then Monster Hunter World came out and that changed everything. It's probably pretty safe to say that Monster Hunter changed my life. For the better or worse is still up to determination though. This is more of a meta problem, but I spent a lot of time playing Monster Hunter specifically for my old channel. I spent hundreds of hours grinding materials, and even more hours meticulously looking over the weapon upgrade trees to make progression path guides. Then it all happened again for Iceborne, and again for Monster Hunter Rise, and again for its DLC, Sunbreak. Monster Hunter Rise was the final nail in the coffin though. Monster Hunter Wilds could very well be the best Monster Hunter yet, but I'll never know, and frankly, I won't care either. I'm just completely done with the series, and I have too many other games I actually want to play. That's all for games you won't see on Backlog Buster for now. Maybe I'll revisit this in the future for 10 more games you will never see on Backlog Buster. Thanks for watching, and next time we'll be back to regularly scheduled content. I'll see you then.